Hey everybody, welcome to my PowerPoint presentation on the Mediterranean, Paleo, and Ketogenic diets, and we'll be comparing all three of those. My name is Miranda. I'm a licensed nutritionist in Minnesota, and I practice functional medicine nutrition, which looks at the root cause of what's causing certain illnesses and ailments. You can find me at www.thrivenutritionmn.com. All right, and then before I begin any presentation, just a reminder that I'm not a physician. I'm not here to provide you with any medical advice, diagnose, or treat you, and that everything provided is for general information purposes only. All right, so it may not occur to you, but the Paleo, Ketogenic, and Mediterranean diets have some similar things in common, which make them some popular healthy diets. For me in my practice, what I've done is I've pulled out some of the best philosophies from each of these diets and fused them together into one ultra healthy diet. And for today, we'll learn basic principles for each of these diets, their specific benefits, and why the best approach may be to eat all three ways. The most common diet, I think, that has popped up in literature multiple times is the Mediterranean diet. It really got popular around the 1990s, so it's kind of one of the older diets that we may have heard of. A Harvard University doctor showcased the diet as being really helpful for improving heart health, also for losing weight fast and easily, and then also clearing up other health issues. The Mediterranean diet is considered by many nutrition experts to be one of the most heart healthy ways for eating. And the diet started back in Italy thousands of years ago and spread to Greece, Spain, and other areas around the Mediterranean. And now this diet is being modeled all around the world for promoting health and longevity. The reason why the Mediterranean diet has worked is that it's loaded with anti-inflammatory foods and built upon plant-based foods and healthy fats. Based on a lot of research, this particular diet can protect against the development of heart disease, metabolic complications, depression, cancer, type 2 diabetes, obesity, dementia, Alzheimer's, and Parkinson's. And a lot of people do like this diet because it provides the opportunity for people to eat, drink, and be merry, as it isn't super strict, and you also can have some red wine. And I wanted to bring your attention to the pyramid. There are a few different pyramids that I found for the Mediterranean diet. This one tends to be more popular. It does have grains as the base, and then vegetables, beans, legumes, nuts, and fruits as the next groups of food to be eating most often. And then you've got olive oil, cheese, yogurt, fish, poultry, eggs, sweets, and then red meat up at the top. And to be more specific, we can look at some of the more popular foods in the Mediterranean diet. There's a strong emphasis on fresh fruits and vegetables, especially leafy greens and non-starchy veggies. That can include spinach, kale, eggplant, cauliflower, artichokes, tomatoes, and fennel. Olive oil is important in the Mediterranean diet, as are nuts and seeds, legumes and beans, herbs and spices for flavoring, so not relying on just salt and pepper like we tend to do in the US. There's a strong emphasis on using whole grains, eating wild-caught fish and seafood, high-quality pasture-raised poultry, eggs, cheese, goat milk, and probiotic-rich kefir or yogurt. The red meat I mentioned is consumed in moderation, so special occasions or about once a week. Plenty of fresh water and some tea or coffee, and then oftentimes a daily glass of red wine. The benefits from the Mediterranean diet are strongly linked to all of the olive oil that they consume. They have lots of olive oil in this diet. And there's been a ton of research into olive oil. And olive oil is incorporated in most meals in the Mediterranean diet. Olives themselves are an ancient food, and olive trees have been growing around the Mediterranean for thousands of years. And olive oil is very high in compounds like phenols, which are potent antioxidants capable of lowering inflammation and fighting free radical damage. Olive oil is mainly made up of monounsaturated fats, and the most important of which are called oleic acid. It's extremely heart healthy in numerous ways, especially when compared to many other refined vegetable oils that we find in the US. Also common in the US, but trending out are trans fats, and those are damaging to the body. Recommendations do differ depending on specific needs, but anywhere from 1 to 4 tablespoons per day seems to be beneficial. And you want to make sure that you're getting quality olive oil. You want olive oil that is in a tinted glass, which prevents light from entering into the oil. And then you want it to be extra virgin and ideally cold pressed. And even looking for a date too on the bottle can be helpful. Anything less than a year old is a good olive oil to have. The Mediterranean diet is also low in processed foods and sugar. The diet consists of foods and ingredients that are found very close to nature, like we mentioned, the olive oil. And then legumes, including peas and beans, fruits, vegetables, unrefined cereal products, and small portions of animal products. In contrast to the typical American diet, it's very low in sugar and practically free of all GMOs or artificial ingredients like high fructose corn syrup, preservatives, and flavor enhancers. For something sweet, people in the Mediterranean enjoy fruit or small quantities of homemade desserts made with natural sweeteners like honey. And then also back to the GMOs, a lot of Europe is banning GMOs, where in Minnesota, or excuse me, in the US, it's very prevalent to have GMOs hidden in foods. And then there's a lot of things going on right now in the government that the Grocery Manufacturers Association and Monsanto and all of these large GMO producing companies are fighting labeling laws that would ultimately require GMOs to be labeled, but they are fighting that. And so we'll talk about that more in May, which is the March against Monsanto is at the end of May. So I'll be dedicating May towards discussing GMOs and what they're all about. And then the Mediterranean diet improves heart and brain health. Beyond plant foods, another major staple of this diet is locally caught fish and a moderate consumption of cow, goat, or sheep cheeses and yogurts that are included as a way to receive healthy fats and cholesterol. Fish like sardines and anchovies are an essential part of the diet, which usually is traditionally lower in meat products than in many Western diets today. And while most people in the Mediterranean aren't vegetarians, the diet promotes only a small consumption on meats and heavier meals, instead going for the lighter and healthier fish options across the board. This can be beneficial for those looking to lose weight and improve things such as their good cholesterol or making their LDL less prone to inflammation. And then the Mediterranean diet also has that good omega-3 fatty acid intake from the foods like avocados and wild-caught fish. The Mediterranean diet does have some limitations. If you remember the first pyramid that I showed, the grains were at the base. I also mentioned that there are a few different variations of the Mediterranean diet in the pyramid form. And so this is another diagram on the right, another pyramid that shows a slightly different Mediterranean diet. And I don't know if the original pyramid is more Americanized, which is based off of our old, outdated food pyramid that has been linked to causing numerous metabolic and chronic conditions. This one that I have right now, I like a lot better because the base itself is actually vegetables and fruits, not the whole grains. Whole grains are definitely better than the processed grains that we have here in the US. So there's a strong emphasis on only having whole grains in the Mediterranean diet. However, copious amounts of grains do cause chronic conditions, and a lot of people cross-react with grains and gluten, and then a lot of people with gut issues also have, or in autoimmune diseases, have issues with digesting grains. So I don't recommend necessarily having a grain-focused diet. However, small amounts of whole grains, if you're generally healthy, may not be terrible for you. Okay, so we talked about the Mediterranean diet a little bit. Now we're going to look into the Paleo diet, and it's known as the Paleolithic diet. It's one of the most popular diets right now. And the idea behind the paleo diet is that it's more of that hunter-gatherer, caveman diet. And it's based off of the idea that before modern agriculture, that the human body evolved and adapted to eating a diet consisting of wild plants and animals. And so even though it's maybe not 100% accurate, it still has a good whole foods approach. The paleo diet consists of foods that can be hunted or fished, like meat. They also recommend organ meat, which is severely lacking in the standard American diet, and it's super nutrient dense. So that's one of the main positives of the paleo diet. Also wild caught seafoods and foods that can be gathered, like eggs, fruits, vegetables, mushrooms, nuts, seeds, herbs, and spices. And if you look at the paleo in a pyramid form, you have meats and fish on the bottom, vegetables, then smaller amounts of fruit, fats, nuts, and seeds. I've also seen some variations of the paleo pyramid, but I think when people think of paleo, this is the more popular pyramid that comes to mind. The cool thing about, okay, I'm going to go back really quick. The cool thing about the paleo pyramid or the paleo diet is that it strongly emphasizes food quality. The Mediterranean diet is more naturally wild caught just because they're along the sea and the ocean, so that's not an issue for them. But I think in America, we have a lot of conventionally raised animals, and they're sick animals that we eat. And I think the paleo diet really highlights the importance of having organic, grass-fed, wild, pasture-raised animals. Not only are these animals living a life that is better for them and they're happier, but we also reap the benefits then of what they provide, because we are what our animals eat. And if our animals are eating grains, that's causing inflammation in their bodies, which then we eat that tissue and then we become inflamed. Some of the benefits of the paleo diet are of the following. Nothing processed. This is one of the most beneficial things of the paleo diet, along with the organ meat and the quality of food. It removes all processed foods and recommends mostly raw foods. And raw foods are really important for us to remember to incorporate in our diet as well. So in America, a lot of our food, the majority of our food for most people, is highly processed, genetically modified food. So we are getting that awareness of having pure food. And we also, with the paleo diet, there's a strong emphasis on wild caught meat. The paleo diet is really high in omega-3 fatty acids and lower in omega-6 fatty acids. According to paleo experts, 60% of food energy should come from animal foods like wild-caught fish, bison, deer, turkey, and eggs. All of these foods are high in omega-3 fatty acids, which the standard American diet is greatly deficient. Omega-3s are really important because they reduce inflammation, they improve neurological function. A lot of our brain is omega-3s, but if you have a diet high in omega-6s, then the omega-6s can start infiltrating in the brain, causing cognitive issues. The omega-3s also aid in digestion, improve focus, and restore healthy skin. The paleo diet also recommends raw fruits, vegetables, nuts, and seeds. And like I said, with the American diet, lots of processed foods. So what happens is we are overfed in calories, but undernourished. And so consuming larger amounts of nutrient-dense foods like vegetables is going to be way more superior to a diet primarily consisting of low-nutrient grains. And also grains, not only are they low in nutrients, but they also can irritate the gut lining and cause inflammation and leaky gut. The paleo diet does have a few limitations in my mind, or in my eye. The foods that are not on the paleo diet are anything processed, which is great, grains, which is fine. But however, I think having legumes sparingly is important. Also, raw dairy can be an important part of overall health. The paleo diet also eliminates salt, which the body does need, especially people who are physically active. And salt can be a great tool for getting in trace minerals. So I really like to use pink Himalayan salt, which has a broad variety of trace minerals. And then I don't recommend necessarily having sea salt because the oceans are so polluted now, and the Himalayan salt is dug out of mountains, so they're untainted. And then the diet doesn't necessarily promote oils, and like olive oil, that's a really healthy oil. Same thing for avocado oil to use. And then the other limitation could possibly be that there's too much of a focus on animal protein as the base. So some people may take it to the extreme and have too much protein, so a protein-heavy diet. All right, lastly, we can talk about the ketogenic diet, and that is that's like the new paleo diet. It's trending right now. The ketogenic diet does have some controversy around it, and it may be due to just lack of studies. There are a lot of studies on the ketogenic diet, and because of the interest, there are a lot more being done. But as we'll see, there is a little bit of controversy, but it does have amazing health benefits that cannot be disputed. The ketogenic was originally used for people with epilepsy at Johns Hopkins Medical Center, and it was found that fasting helped improve the amount of seizures people had. However, fasting is not feasible to do for more than a few days, and so a diet was developed that would trick the body into think it was fasting. And then improving epilepsy isn't all a ketogenic can do. It also aids in losing weight, fighting cancer, and even treating Alzheimer's disease. And then for those of you that may not be familiar with the ketogenic diet, I'm going to talk a little bit about how our body breaks down food into energy, and specifically we'll start out with carbohydrates. When we eat carbohydrates, insulin is released as a reaction to elevated blood sugar or blood glucose, which is broken down carbohydrates. Insulin is a storage hormone that signals the cells to store as much available energy as possible, initially as glycogen. So glucose then binds with other glucose molecules and becomes glycogen, which is stored carbohydrates. Then they can get converted or excess carbohydrate intake can get converted as fat. The ketogenic diet works by eliminating carbohydrates from the diet and keeps the body's carbohydrates at the stores almost empty, which prevents too much insulin from being released during meals. And when you have too much insulin, or if you have insulin resistance, your body is unable to use fat for energy because the hormone is saying store, store, store. So when you have less insulin around, the body starts to burn its own fat for energy, which helps you lose weight quickly. And then your body will also continue to burn fat even when you're sleeping at night. And this means your body is burning fat 24/7. And we're naturally in a ketogenic state when we're sleeping. That's why we don't have to get up at 2 a.m. and then again at 4 a.m. to go run to the fridge, because our body naturally gets into that ketogenic state, which gives us energy while we're sleeping. And so basically, a ketogenic diet puts your body in ketosis, which is a metabolic state where most of the body's energy comes from ketone bodies in the blood. And this is in contrast to a glycosis state where blood glucose, sugar, provides most of the energy. Our bodies normally run on glucose or sugar for energy. If we're having a standard American diet, we can't make glucose and only have about 24 hours of it stored in our muscles and liver. Once glucose is no longer available, we begin to burn stored fat. The bottom line here is that because a ketogenic diet eliminates glucose, it causes the body to burn stored fat. And I wanted to take a moment too. This is kind of like a ancestral way of eating. When you think about thousands of years ago, we didn't have the luxury of electricity and having refrigerators and a grocery store to go to if we ran out of food. It was, feast and famine. And when we weren't feasting, then we weren't not eating. And the ketogenic diet sort of replicates that feast and famine, where you're not always going to have those carbohydrates available, and it helps your body tap into its fat stores for energy. There's a doctor, a Harvard researcher, I want to say it's Dr. David Ludwig, who compares obesity to a starvation state. These people have a lot of fat on their body, which indicates that they could break it down for energy, but because of the diet they're eating, a hard processed sugar carbohydrate diet, then because of the hormones that are circulating through the insulin and various other hormones, it's like the body can't recognize that fat to use as energy. And so the ketogenic diet then really helps the body normalize, so that you shouldn't have to eat every 2 hours, but rather you could go 4 or 5 hours without eating, because your body is efficiently switching between glucose and ketone bodies for energy. Carbohydrates and sugar, from a paleo perspective, were not very common, but with food processing and our current lifestyles make carbohydrates and sugar easily accessed. And if you want to think about it, back in our hunter and gatherer days, sugar and carbohydrates were tasty treats. There wasn't really much to grab from a carbohydrate or sugar standpoint. I mean, they have tubers and starchy vegetables, and maybe you'd get your hands on some wild berries, which were lower in sugar than the berries we have today, because berries have been bred for sweetness. And then maybe we got our hands on some honey, but that was it. And carbohydrates and sugar were more popular in the summer when things were growing, and the carbohydrates when plants were growing. And then the carbohydrates were stored for quick energy, and also excess was stored for fat, which then helped our bodies survive the winter, because then we would use that stored fat for energy over the winter. Even thinking 50 years ago or 70 years ago, there wasn't sliced bread, and your great great grandma had to put a lot of effort into making bread. A lot of people had to grind their own grain down in their own grain mills. Donuts were pretty much unheard of, and a pie maybe was eaten on a special occasion. Now we eat them all the time, it's everywhere. And so that's kind of important, I think, when you think of ancestral eating and modeling that and knowing that sugars and carbohydrates were not common, and therefore naturally our bodies weren't really built to handle that excessive amount. But it's so easy to get it now, and that may help with understanding why it's important to moderate those carbohydrates and the sugar intake. This is a diagram showing a little bit more about how ketosis works. And so if you have a traditional American diet, which is higher carb, you've got glucose levels that rise from the bread. The pancreas secretes insulin. The insulin shuttles glucose into the cell, and then you get energy and fat storage, potentially. On a ketogenic diet, you have higher fat diet. Glucose levels fall. Lipase releases stored triglycerides, which is fat. Fatty acids travel to the liver, and the liver produces ketones. And then you also get energy. A ketogenic diet is 75% fat, 20% protein, which includes animal meat and vegetables, and then carbohydrate at 5%. Ketosis is a range, and there is an optimal ketone zone. You can look at blood ketones, which is a more accurate measure than urine ketones. But anything between 1 and 3 is an optimal ketone zone. Anything beyond that, you get into starvation. And then ketoacidosis is a dangerous ketone level typically found in uncontrolled diabetes. And so people who do the ketogenic diet will test their blood daily just to see where things are at. The ketogenic diet has numerous benefits. Weight loss is a huge benefit because it lowers insulin levels and increases the body's ability to burn stored fat. The ketogenic diet has been examined for cancer and killing cancer cells. So that's a new area of research right now, which is really exciting. Cancer cells tend to feed off of sugar, and therefore a diet that eliminates sugar and other carbohydrates is showing to be effective in preventing or fighting cancer. The regular cells found in our body are able to use fat for energy, but cancer cells cannot metabolically shift to use fat, and that's why it can be helpful for killing cancer cells. Ketogenic diets are also used to treat and reverse Alzheimer's symptoms. Parkinson's is another area of research, autism, depression, migraines. So a huge list of all of these really horrible things to have are being found to benefit from the ketogenic diet. As far as weight loss goes, the ketogenic diet can benefit most healthy adults, especially those struggling to lose weight. It can also be really helpful for those who have type 2 diabetes who are not on insulin. And so anyone who is taking insulin and is interested in the ketogenic diet should talk to their doctor prior to starting a ketogenic diet, as insulin dosages may need to be adjusted. And I wanted to make sure that everyone knew that even though a ketogenic diet is a very high fat diet, it should not raise your cholesterol. It may raise it a touch, but not much, and it will not increase your risk for heart disease. The reason for that is carbohydrates and sugar cause inflammation, which causes damage, which causes disease. And the root cause of most diseases, especially heart disease, is caused again by inflammation, influenced mostly by the intake of trans fats and sugar, not by heart healthy fats. So if you want to lose weight, reduce your risk of cancer, and improve your blood sugar, a ketogenic diet may be something you want to consider. There are a few limitations of the ketogenic diet, and a true ketogenic diet is extremely strict. It's 75% fat, 20% protein, and 5% carbohydrates. And this strict diet may not be necessary for adults to reap the benefits of this diet. A lot of people find weight loss success in a more moderate approach to the low-carb ketogenic diet by just reducing their carbohydrate consumption and increasing calories from healthy fats and proteins. So you don't have to be quite at that 75% fat, but maybe you're more at like 50 or 60. And that's a modified ketogenic diet. So a true ketogenic diet is really strict. Second limitation is that it may not be enough carbohydrates, especially for women. Women are more sensitive to lower carbs. So for me in my practice, if a woman wants to lose weight, wants to try out the ketogenic diet, I have them naturally have a higher amount of carbohydrates than if I were to for a man to be on a ketogenic diet. And then there is some question on whether or not ketogenic diets are beneficial long term. So typically a ketogenic diet could be done for a few months, like 3 to 6 months. And then after that, you can add in more carbohydrates back into your diet up to, 200 grams per day. But your carbohydrate intake can be influenced on, how active you are. Okay, so let's put the best parts of each of the diets together into one awesome diet. All right, so we look at the Mediterranean, lots of produce, lots of unprocessed foods. The diet is naturally high in good fats like olive oil, nuts, and omega-3s from wild-caught fish. There's only whole grains or strong emphasis on whole grains. Paleo, more so quality, looking at pasture eggs. They incorporate that ancestral approach to food preparation, looking at not only eating nuts and seeds, but preparing them appropriately so your body can extract the most nutrients from them. So looking at, how to soak and sprout seeds for the best digestive benefit. They also incorporate organ meats. There's also an emphasis on eating more vegetables than fruit, which is great. And then the ketogenic diet, it allows for dairy, especially, you could take it a step further and get raw dairy and fermented dairy. You'll get great benefits from that. There's a very strong emphasis on low-carb vegetables, which are the dark leafy green vegetables typically, and those are jam-packed with nutrients. The ketogenic diet also explores incorporating all types of fat, saturated and unsaturated. When you have a ketogenic diet, you're looking at a lot of coconut oil and coconut milk, avocados, chia seeds, non-starchy veggies, sprouted nuts, seeds, organic meat, and pasture-raised meat too, ideally, and then raw dairy products for all of that healthy fat. Most adults will see weight loss by just reducing carbs to 30% of their diet and increasing fat and protein to 40% and 30%. You can do it that way, or if you wanted to make it even better, you can put some special attention on medium chain triglyceride fats, which help the body burn more fat. That would be a product that you would buy, which would either be coconut oil or, better yet, MCT oil. And what MCT oil does is it helps the body stay in ketosis even when you increase carbohydrate intake. So it's not like, it's kind of not, some people say it's kind of cheating, but I don't see it as cheating. It just helps you be a little bit more lenient on your carbohydrate intake while staying in ketosis. And there is a potential for the ketogenic diet to be used long term, but that would be used with carbohydrate cycling. So if you're doing a more strict ketogenic diet, you would take one day during the week and incorporate more carbohydrates so you go out of ketosis. Or you could be more lenient throughout the week with your carb intake, but then have MCT oil. So there's a lot of different ways you can play around with it. And then the last slide just shows kind of a marriage of all three of those diets together. Really healthy veggies, the non-starchy leafy greens as the base. Lots of servings there. Then you have an emphasis on healthy fats. Then you have your animal protein, and then your fruit / potentially grains up at the top. All right. Well, that is my presentation. Hopefully that cleared up some questions about the different diets and maybe how you may want to choose different types of each diet and fuse them together for your own. Everybody is different, and so what I showed today may work for some people, and other people may need to play around with it a little bit more. But I wanted to thank you so much for your time today, and until next time, I hope you have a wonderful day. And for those of you in Minnesota, get outside and enjoy that weather.